Excuse me, everybody. Because of time constraints today, the program is starting at 3, so I'm going to do the little introduction that we would normally be doing about the program part right now. So I apologize for those of you that are coming in, but we're trying to put a little bit of everything together today. My name is Joanna Craig, and I do want to welcome everybody to our annual Patriot and Picnics concert. This year, we're going to be dedicating the program to the memory and the legacy of Charles Baxley, who died this past spring. Charles was truly a Renaissance man, a well-known attorney with numerous credentials in the legal field. He was also deeply involved in the Boy Scouts, the Kershaw County Historical Society. He was a master tree farmer and a pilot. Charles was all about his passion for the Southern campaign of the American Revolution. From his online magazine, battlefield tours, and roundtables, to his work with the South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust and the South Carolina Liberty Trail. In 2021, Governor McMaster appointed Charles as chairman of the South Carolina Centennial Commission to oversee the state's 250th birthday celebration, which will be unfolding now and going through the next couple of years. Understandably, a major focus of the celebration is the state's extraordinary Revolutionary War history, which Kershaw County's 250th committee is enthusiastically embracing. One of my favorite slogans for Camden was created in conjunction with the 1970 opening of historic Camden Revolutionary War site. It said, "Spend a few peaceful hours where the British spent a rough year." And it summed up perfectly the riveting story tourists and the community would learn about Camden's significant contribution to the 1780-81 Southern campaign and why Camden rightfully earned a page in every history book. After the fall of Charleston in May 1780, Charles Lord Cornwallis immediately marched about 2,500 troops to Camden with plans to make Camden his main supply post, or quote, repository for the supply of the Army and its intended operations, unquote. They arrived June 1st and heavily fortified the town, for as he later said, the loss of Camden would have resulted in, quote, the loss of the whole province except Charlestown and all of Georgia except Savannah, unquote. 2 major battles were fought by, both defeats, and many, quote, expeditions and forays against the Whigs were launched from Camden, unquote, before the British did leave here in May 1781. I would now like to read the name of the known patriots from the Camden district who fought bravely during those years. Dr. Isaac Alexander, Lewis Ballard, Thomas Ballard, William Blair, Burl Boykin, Francis Boykin, John Boykin, Samuel Boykin, Alexander Brevard, Joseph Brevard, Adam Brisbane, Thomas Broom, James Brown, James Canty, Zach Canty, Benjamin Carter, Thomas Charlton, John Chestnut, Lewis Cook, John Drakeford, Richard Drakeford, Isaac DeBose, John Fletcher, Benjamin Hale, Henry Hunter, Abraham Kelly, John Kelly, Eli Kershaw, Joseph Kershaw, Duncan McRae, Dr. James Martin, John Martin, Samuel Mathis, Duncan McRae, Captain William Nettles, Douglas Stark, John Whitaker, Thomas Whitaker, Willis Whitaker, John Wiley, and Samuel Wiley. Before I introduce Rusty Major, who will introduce the band, I would like to personally thank Historic Camden, who for years hosted this event, steamy though they were all those years at Historic Camden, and also thank the Camden High School for sharing this wonderfully chilled auditorium the past couple of years. Most importantly, I would like to thank Boyd Black and the Camden Community Concert Band Board, BJ, Glenn, and the other conductors, and especially all of you band members who have provided these wonderful toe-tapping patriotic concerts since the summer of 2015. You are truly the best. Thank you, and now this is Rusty Manger.
Thank you, Joanna. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of air conditioning. That's what we're up here today for. We have a couple of people that need to be thanked also before we get going. Individuals. So Jerry Taylor. Jerry, where you at? Jerry Taylor's responsible for the audio and visual you did today. Fiona Greenwood, where you at, Fiona? She's responsible for the stage decorations. And this overdraft of our poster here came from the fertile mind of Johnny B. And he did it without asking, and he did it without help, and it all came out just beautiful, don't you think? So thank you, Mr. Gilligan. Charles Baxley was also a musician, if people don't realize that. He was in the Camden High School band with me, and we won 5 state titles while I was in the band. And Charles loved music, and he loved this program. He was here last year, gave a good dissertation, and was scheduled to be here again this year for an encore performance. But as we all know, he passed away, and he'll be sorely missed. There's another member of that band here that helped bring home all those state titles. And that man is not only a Hall of Fame band director, but he's also a recipient of the highest civil order, by order of the Palmetto, and that is Mr. Glenn Price, conductor of Camden. Glenn, let there be music. Thank you.
Patriots and Pops Independence Day Concert. My name is Jerome Ogden, and it is my pleasure to introduce the Camden Community Concert Band under the direction of Mr. Glenn Price. The band is made up of volunteer musicians from Kershaw County and surrounding communities. We share a love of music and a desire to fellowship with other musicians and serve our community. If that sounds like you, then we invite you to join us. All you need is an instrument, at least a vague memory of how to play it, and a willingness to practice. In return, we promise fun, fellowship, a bit of hard work, and the adulation of our adoring audience. Seriously, we really do appreciate your attendance and your support. After all, what is music without someone to share it with? You're always here to cheer us on, and we thank you very much. We began our program this afternoon with an American Fanfare by Rick Kirby. You may have recognized the familiar strains of My Country 'Tis of Thee, more commonly known as America. Mr. Kirby has taken this normally hymn-like and stately melody and incorporated it into the fast, hard-driving fanfare the band just performed. An interesting side note is that when Samuel Francis Smith wrote the words to America, he did not know that the tune was the same as the British national anthem, God Save the King. The melody Mr. Smith used was found in a songbook of German school songs and had been adapted from Museo Clementi's Symphony No. 3. Contrary to some reports, Mr. Smith was not intentionally co-opting the British anthem to make a statement about American democracy. But there's nothing wrong with a little irony, is there? God Save the King is not the only tune that we repurpose for purely American lyrics. Let me tell you about that. Following the Revolution, there were continued territory disputes with England, and by 1812, they erupted into open conflict. In September of 1814, Francis Scott Key, a Maryland attorney, was asked to negotiate the release of one of his neighbors, Dr. William Beans, who was being held on board a British ship for aiding in the detention of several British Army stragglers who were ransacking local homesteads in search of food. He was able to secure the release of Dr. Beans with the help of several signed affidavits from British prisoners of war praising the doctor for his kind treatment of their wounds. During these negotiations, however, the British were preparing an attack on Baltimore, so they delayed the release in order to keep their battle plans secret, holding them on the ships. At sunrise on a rainy Tuesday, September 13th, 1814, the 16-ship fleet opened fire on Fort McHenry. The British fired between 1,500 and 1,800 bombshells and over 700 rockets at the fort. The attack lasted 25 hours, but amazingly resulted in only 4 American deaths with 24 wounded. As the bombardment began, the fort commander had replaced the garrison flag with the smaller storm flag, which measured 17 feet by 25 feet. Still pretty large. Throughout the day, Mr. Scott and Mr. Beans were able to catch glimpses of the flag through the rain and the smoke. But when night fell, they were unable to tell how the battle was going. As the sun rose on Wednesday morning, the British ceased their relentless attack and the smoke began to clear. At some point during the night, the fort had lowered the storm flag and raised the 30-foot by 40-foot garrison flag. The British fleet withdrew and released Mr. Key and Mr. Beans. Mr. Key was so inspired by what he had witnessed that he took out an envelope he had in his pocket and began writing. The result was his poem, Defense of Fort McHenry. By either luck or design, the meter for Mr. Key's poem was a good fit for a tune that John Stafford Smith had published in 1780 in England, titled To Anacreon in Heaven. The song was the theme song for the Anacreontic Society, a gentleman's club for musicians in London. It had become a popular drinking song in England and in the colonies. Within days of the Battle of Fort McHenry, the poem was published under the title, The Star-Spangled Banner, with the note, To Anacreon in Heaven. In 1931, it became our official national anthem. We invite you to stand, and if you're so inclined, to sing along as we present our national anthem, The Star-Spangled Banner. commissioned by and dedicated to the International Bandmasters Fraternity Phi Beta Mu and honors 3 significant anniversaries that occurred in 2014. That year marked the 200th anniversary of the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner in 1814, the 100th anniversary of the beginning of World War I in 1914, and the 70th anniversary of Operation Overlord, the 1944 invasion of Nazi-occupied France, which began with the landing of Allied troops in Normandy on D-Day. With those key events in mind, Mr. Vinson has used his original theme to weave together America the Beautiful and the Star-Spangled Banner to remind us that the freedom we enjoy was not free. March king, John Philip Sousa, was once asked to list the 3 most effective street marches ever written. Sousa, who can never be accused of indulging in false humility, listed 2 of his own compositions, but selected National Emblem for the 3rd pick. When putting together a program to be used for Liberty Bond drives for World War I, he chose 5 marches, 4 his, but the 5th was, once again, National Emblem. But this great American march came very close to being lost forever. Edwin Eugene Bagley composed the score during a 1902 train tour with his family band. He became frustrated with the ending and tossed it in the trash bin. Members of the band pulled it out, secretly rehearsed it in the baggage car, and then informed him just minutes before the next performance that it had been added to the program. I should note here that Mr. Price has asked me to strongly discourage this kind of mutinous behavior in the band. Okay? We proudly and thankfully present Andrew Ballott's arrangement of E. E. Bagley's National Emblem March. Spectacular was arranged by Chris Sharp. Dr. Sharp has an impressive resume. In fact, if you've ever been to a Disney park anywhere in the world, you have probably heard one of his arrangements or compositions, since he served as an arranger and orchestrator for the Disney parks worldwide since 1984. This medley takes us on a musical journey through American history. God Save the King symbolizes the protection that the young colonies enjoyed under the British Empire in our earliest days. The Girl I Left Behind Me and Chester commemorate the Revolution. Hail Columbia was our first national anthem and was played at George Washington's inauguration. Columbia, the gem of the ocean, symbolizes the War of 1812 when America gained recognition as a naval power. Shenandoah marks the westward expansion, and When Johnny Comes Marching Home was the hopeful song of wives and families on both sides during the Civil War. The battle cry of freedom was a rallying cry during reunification and Reconstruction. The foreign conflicts of the 20th century are recalled by Over There, the caisson song of the U.S. Army, and snippets of songs from the other branches of the military. The grand finale is the beloved anthem, America the Beautiful, an American spectacular arranged by Chris Sharp. won through conflict, and we have on occasion found it necessary to defend that liberty. War is a terrible evil, but sometimes it is required to assure that freedom prevails. As Americans, we tend to look at the world in a positive light. We prefer to laugh rather than wallow in our troubles. Perhaps that is why sitcoms such as F-Troop, Gomer Pyle USMC, McHale's Navy, and MASH have been so popular. One of the most successful and the longest running sitcom based on World War II was Hogan's Heroes. You can easily find all 168 episodes on several streaming platforms. So you know what you can do this afternoon to stay on. The theme for the show was written as a march by composer Jerry Fielding. He was born in 1922 in Pittsburgh as Joshua Itzhak Feldman. By 1930, records show that he had dropped the Joseph Itzhak in favor of Jerry. Over the next 10 years, he briefly experimented with the trombone before taking up the clarinet and earning a scholarship to the Carnegie Institute for Instrumentalists. After dropping out of school due to ill health, he found work at the Stanley Theater, where he played with pianist Errol Garner, trumpet player Billy May, and a young man named Henry Mancini. He and Mancini studied composition and arranging with the theater's pit orchestra conductor, Matt Adkins. The World War II draft broke up the Stanley Theater band, but since Jerry was too frail for service, he began arranging for the big bands that were so popular at the time. His work included arrangements for such names as Tommy Dorsey and Les Brown. In 1947, he was offered the job of arranger and band leader for the Jack Paar radio program, but they told him that his name, Feldman, was too Jewish, and he would have to change it if he wanted the position. Reluctantly, he changed his name to Fielding, a transition that he looked on with bitterness for the rest of his life. Although he was never a communist or a communist sympathizer, he was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1953, but refused to answer their questions. He was subsequently blacklisted from working in radio and television, so he packed up and went to Las Vegas, where he kept his career going with live performances and recordings. In 1959, Fielding found his way back into television when Desi Lou Productions backed him as the musical director for The Betty Hutton Show. The show was not a success, but it did help Fielding back into the TV and movie business. Through all of these ups and downs, Jerry Fielding demonstrated the greatest of American characteristics. He refused to quit. He received Academy Award nominations for his work in the movies The Wild Bunch, Straw Dogs, and The Outlaw Josie Wales. Fielding scored television shows, including episodes of Star Trek and Kojak, and wrote theme songs for The Bionic Woman, The Tim Conway Show, and our next offering, The Hogan's Heroes March. Hogan's Heroes March by Jerry Fielding. not too far from Des Moines, there's a boulder. For many years, local teens would spray paint it with graffiti. Artist Ray Sorensen of Greenfield, Iowa, came across the rock, and in 1999, he decided that it should be properly painted once and for all. Inspired by the movie Saving Private Ryan, and wanting to honor our nation's veterans, he emblazoned the sides of the rock with battle scenes from our nation's history, including Washington's crossing of the Delaware and a scene from 9/11. Fragments of speeches from American presidents were included, and an American flag draped the 60-ton boulder, which became known as Freedom Rock. In 2013, Mr. Sorensen began the Freedom Rock Tour by painting a Freedom Rock in each of Iowa's 99 counties, and there's currently a project to paint a Freedom Rock in all 50 states. The Message on the Rock by Robert Sheldon was commissioned in 2004. Mr. Sheldon's composition includes 3 quotes found on the original Freedom Rock. These quotes are from Thomas Jefferson, John F. Kennedy, and George W. Bush. The Message on the Rock by Robert Sheldon. Without boasting of it. We respect that of others without fearing it. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and success of freedom. We will not waver. We will not tire. We will not falter, and we will not fail. Peace and freedom will prevail. All gave some gave all. an epic Revolutionary War movie that takes place primarily in South Carolina. The main character is a composite of 4 of the most influential leaders of the American fight for independence: Andrew Pickens, Francis Marion, Daniel Morgan, and Thomas Sumter were all actively involved in the fighting here in South Carolina. John Williams' sweeping score earned an Academy Award nomination. The arrangement by John Ross brings it all to life with fife and drum segments, Appalachian melodies, and dramatic orchestral strains. The Patriot by John Williams, arranged by John Moss. liberty to the men and women who have answered the call to duty, service, and sacrifice. As the band plays Armed Forces on Parade, we invite all of those who have served, as well as those who want to honor a family member or loved one who served, to stand as the theme song for your branch of the military is played. And that includes you band members as well, okay? Now, I do need to let you know that our medley does not include the theme for the U.S. Space Force. If you are associated with this most recent addition to our military, then we invite you to stand along with the Air Force as we honor those men and women who guard our liberty. Armed Forces on Parade. served and sacrificed to keep us free. Our America is a medley of American favorites arranged by John Higgins. Yankee Doodle Boy, You're a Grand Old Flag, This Land is Your Land, and God Bless the USA are all songs that we as Americans sing with pride and patriotism. It is interesting that the list includes a couple of songs that at one time might have been considered anti-American. Yankee Doodle was originally sung by British military officers to mock the disheveled, disorganized colonial Yankees with whom they served during the French and Indian Wars. But by the time of the Revolution, it had become a song of defiance, popular among the very men it was intended to ridicule. This Land Is Your Land was a protest song written by Woody Guthrie in 1940 as a critical response to God Bless America. The original title was actually God Bless America for Me. Two of the original verses pointed out the economic inequities that can still be found across our nation. Even so, the song still contains a ring of hope in the line, "This land was made for you and me." We Americans are a diverse people. We're descended from Native Americans, from the Pilgrims and English colonists, from those brought here against their will and forced into slavery. We come from immigrants searching for a better life, better opportunities, fleeing from persecution, looking for a safe haven. But no matter what our heritage, race, religious beliefs, or political affiliations, we all yearn to breathe free. And although we often find ourselves in bitter debate, we somehow find our way to common ground, and we acknowledge that even in our diversity, we are all proud to be Americans. Our America, arranged by John Higgins. The American march music was the top 40 of the 1850s through the 1920s, until jazz began to have widespread appeal. America boasts many great march composers, but none are more well known than John Philip Sousa, the March King. His most popular march by far was adopted as our nation's official national march in 1987. We close our program with the Stars and Stripes Forever. We want to thank you for coming out this afternoon, and we want to wish you all a happy and safe Independence Day. The Stars and Stripes Forever. and be safe.